When we hear the words human trafficking, many people look away. It feels too dark, too painful, too far from our daily lives. But today, I want you to lean in, because this is not just a story of suffering. This is a story of survival, courage, and transformation. It is the story of a woman who was once trapped in a world where her voice was stolen, her freedom was denied, and her future seemed erased. Yet she stood back up, not just for herself, but for countless girls who were still waiting to be rescued. She was not born weak. She was born trusting. Like many young girls, she believed the promises that were made to her, promises of work, safety, and a better life. Those promises became chains. She was moved from place to place, treated as a product instead of a person, and silenced by fear and violence. Imagine waking up every day not knowing if anyone in the world cared whether you survived or not. Imagine being told, again and again, that escape was impossible. Many would have broken. Many did. But somewhere deep inside her, a quiet voice refused to die. That voice said, "This cannot be the end of my story." Even when her body was exhausted and her spirit bruised, hope remained. It wasn't loud or dramatic, it was fragile, almost invisible, but it was enough. One moment of courage, one decision to trust the right hand reaching out, changed everything. Her escape was not easy, and freedom did not instantly erase the trauma. Survival was only the first battle. Healing was the longer war. After she was rescued, the world expected her to disappear, to quietly rebuild her life and move on. But she made a different choice. She chose to speak. She chose to remember. And most importantly, she chose to act. She turned her pain into purpose and her scars into strength. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" she began asking, "How can I stop this from happening to others?" Today, she works on the front lines of rescue and rehabilitation. She helps identify trafficking networks, supports shelters, and stands beside girls who are still trembling with fear because she knows that fear. When a rescued girl says, "No one understands," she looks her in the eyes and says, "I do." That connection saves lives. Her presence alone tells these girls something powerful. You are not broken. You are not alone. And your future is still yours. What makes her story extraordinary is not just that she survived, but that she returned to the fire to pull others out. That takes a rare kind of bravery. She walks into dark places with light in her hands. She faces criminals with truth in her voice. And every time she speaks, she reminds the world that survivors are not victims forever. They can become protectors, leaders, and change makers. So when you think of strength, don't only think of muscle or power. Think of this woman. Think of a heart that refused to stop beating with hope. Think of a voice that rose after being silenced. Her story teaches us that even in the darkest systems of exploitation, humanity can fight back and win. There is a moment in every survival story that most people never see. It is not the escape, not the rescue, not the applause that comes later. It is the moment when a woman looks at herself after everything has been taken and asks a terrifying question: do I still have strength left inside me? For her, that moment came when the noise of control and cruelty finally fell silent, and she was left alone with her memories. Many believe survival ends when freedom begins, but that is a comforting myth. Real strength is forged after survival. When pain demands a decision, either it will crush you, or you will shape it into something powerful. What makes her journey extraordinary is not that she endured unimaginable abuse, but that she refused to let that endurance be the end of her identity. Human trafficking tried to reduce her to an object, a number, a shadow. Every day was designed to erase her sense of worth. And yet, somewhere beneath fear and exhaustion, something stubborn remained. Not rage, not revenge, but a quiet, unyielding belief that her life still had value. That belief became her first act of strength. Before the world saw her as brave, she chose to see herself as worthy of survival. When freedom finally came, it did not arrive with instant healing. Trauma does not disappear because chains are removed. Her body was free, but her mind carried echoes of control, shame, and loss. This is where many stories fade into silence. This is where strength is truly tested. Instead of hiding from her pain, she faced it with honesty. She learned that strength is not pretending to be okay. It is allowing yourself to be broken and still deciding to move forward. Every therapy session, every sleepless night, every trembling step back into the world became part of her transformation. Here is the truth that brave women understand deeply. Pain can either harden you or deepen you. She chose depth. She allowed her suffering to teach her compassion, awareness, and resilience. What once made her vulnerable became the source of her emotional intelligence. She could recognize fear in others because she had lived inside it. She could identify manipulation because she had survived it. This was not accidental strength, it was earned, slowly and painfully, through self-work and courage. At some point, she realized something powerful. Her survival was not only personal, it was meaningful. The very experiences that once filled her with shame now gave her authority. She understood the systems, the lies, the tactics used to trap girls because she had lived them. This realization marked a turning point. Strength stopped being about endurance and became about purpose. She was no longer just someone who survived trafficking. She was someone who could expose it, challenge it, and fight it with insight no textbook could teach. What inspires me most, as someone who has studied and shared brave women's stories for years, is how she reframed her past. She did not glorify her suffering, nor did she deny it. She claimed it. She understood that strength does not mean loving what happened to you, it means refusing to let what happened define your limits. Instead of asking for pity, she demanded change. Instead of shrinking under her history, she stood taller because of it. There were days when doubt returned, when the weight of memory felt unbearable. Strength is not permanent confidence, it is repeated choice. Again and again, she chose to show up, to speak, to train, to support, to learn. Each time she did, her strength grew more visible, not just to others, but to herself. She became proof that resilience is not something you are born with, it is something you build. Her transformation sends a powerful message to every woman listening today. Strength does not come from having an easy life. It comes from surviving a hard one without losing your humanity. She did not become strong despite her past. She became strong because she refused to let that past destroy her future. Her survival was not an ending. It was raw material. Now, when she stands before others, she does not speak as a victim seeking sympathy. She speaks as a woman who has faced darkness and learned how to carry light. Her strength is calm, grounded, and unshakable. It tells every girl who feels trapped by circumstance, fear, or silence that survival is only the beginning. And that within every woman who has endured, there is a power waiting to be claimed, shaped, and turned into something unstoppable. Silence is often the final weapon used against women who have already endured too much. After escape, after survival, the world subtly encourages quietness. Move on, don't reopen wounds, don't make people uncomfortable. For her, silence would have been the easier path. It would have allowed her to blend in, to rebuild privately, to protect herself from judgment and disbelief. But brave women do not choose what is easy. They choose what is necessary. She understood something critical early on. Silence was not neutral. Silence protected the system that had harmed her. Speaking out did not begin on a stage or in front of cameras. It began in trembling conversations, in rooms where her voice shook and her hands refused to stay still. Every word felt like a risk. She worried she would be doubted, blamed, or reduced again, this time by society instead of traffickers. These fears were not imaginary. Survivors are often questioned more harshly than criminals. Yet she spoke anyway. That decision alone required a level of courage most people will never be asked to summon. When she shared her story, she did not do so to shock or seek sympathy. She spoke with intention. She named the lies that trapped her, the manipulation disguised as opportunity, the silence enforced through fear. By doing this, she exposed not just individual criminals, but the patterns that allow trafficking to survive in plain sight. Her voice became a mirror, forcing society to look at what it often chooses to ignore. And once something is seen clearly, it becomes harder to deny. There is power in testimony, especially when it comes from lived experience. Laws can be ignored, reports can be buried, statistics can be dismissed, but a human voice, steady and honest, carries weight. When she spoke, people listened differently. Policymakers heard consequences. Communities recognized warning signs. Families understood risks they had never been taught to see. Her voice disrupted comfort, and that discomfort created awareness. What makes her refusal to stay silent even more remarkable is that she spoke not only about what happened to her, but about what continues to happen to others. She consistently shifted the focus away from herself and toward prevention, protection, and accountability. She reminded audiences that trafficking is not rare, not distant, and not limited to certain places or backgrounds. By doing so, she expanded the conversation beyond sympathy into responsibility. As a brave women's stories expert, I can say this with certainty. When one survivor speaks, she gives permission to others to breathe. After her first public talks, messages began to arrive. Girls who had never told their stories wrote to say, "I thought I was alone until I heard you." Mothers reached out, recognizing patterns too late but determined to protect others. Her voice became a bridge between silence and survival for many who were still trapped emotionally, even after physical escape. Speaking also reclaimed something deeply personal: control over her narrative. Trafficking steals choice. Silence often continues that theft. By telling her story in her own words, she decided how her past would be understood. She refused to let shame narrate her life. This act of self-definition is a powerful form of resistance. It transforms memory from a source of pain into a tool for change. Of course, speaking out came with consequences. There were critics who questioned her credibility, voices that suggested she was exaggerating, people who preferred comfort over truth. But bravery is not the absence of opposition. It is the ability to stand steady within it. Each challenge strengthened her resolve. She learned that when truth is spoken clearly, it does not need to shout. It only needs to persist. Over time, her voice grew calmer, stronger, more assured. Not because the memories faded, but because she no longer feared them. Silence had once isolated her. Speaking connected her to advocates, to survivors, to allies who shared her mission. That connection multiplied her impact. One voice became many. One story became a movement of awareness. Her refusal to stay silent sends a message far beyond trafficking. It speaks to every woman who has been told to endure quietly, to every survivor who believes their story is too heavy to carry aloud. It says this: your voice is not a burden. It is a force. When used with purpose, it can challenge systems, protect the vulnerable, and rewrite futures. She did not speak because it was easy. She spoke because silence had already cost too much. And in doing so, she proved that a woman's voice, once reclaimed, can become one of the strongest tools for justice the world has. Freedom often invites one simple expectation: walk away and never look back. For most survivors, that would be understandable. After enduring exploitation, fear, and loss, turning toward a quiet life would seem like the ultimate victory. But brave women are rarely satisfied with personal safety alone. For her, freedom came with a heavy awareness she was out, but thousands of girls were still inside the darkness she knew too well. And once you have seen that truth clearly, walking away is no longer an option. She understood something that only survivors truly grasp. Rescue is not just about unlocking doors, it is about rebuilding shattered trust. When she chose to become a shield for other girls, she did not enter this work as an outsider or a hero arriving to save the helpless. She entered as someone who had been there, who knew the fear behind forced smiles, the silence behind obedience, and the invisible chains that keep victims compliant even when escape seems possible. That understanding became her greatest strength. In shelters and recovery centers, she sat with girls who would not speak, who flinched at kindness, who expected betrayal at every turn. Others might have seen resistance or trauma. She saw herself. She knew that healing does not begin with advice, but with presence. Sometimes the most powerful protection she offered was simply saying, "I believe you." Those words, spoken by someone who truly understands, can restore dignity faster than any program or policy. Her role went far beyond emotional support. She worked with rescue teams to identify trafficking patterns, recruitment tactics, and psychological control methods that are invisible to those who have never lived them. She could spot danger signs others missed, the way a girl avoided eye contact, the rehearsed answers, the unnatural calm that hides terror. In meetings with law enforcement and NGOs, her insights saved time, resources, and lives. Experience became expertise, and survival became strategy. What makes her commitment extraordinary is that it required her to revisit pain intentionally. Every rescue reminded her of what she had escaped. Every frightened face reflected memories she could never fully erase. This is not weakness. This is courage in its purest form. She chose discomfort so others could have safety. She chose emotional risk so others could have a future. This is the kind of bravery that does not seek applause, because its reward is quieter the moment a girl realizes she is no longer alone. As a brave women's stories expert, I have seen many forms of strength, but few compare to the strength required to protect others while still healing yourself. She did not wait until she was fully healed, because healing is not a finish line. She understood that purpose itself can be healing. Each girl she helped reclaim her life became a reminder that her suffering had not been meaningless. Her presence also challenged the way society views survivors. Too often, survivors are seen only as people in need of help, not as leaders capable of providing it. She shattered that narrative. She demonstrated that survivors hold solutions, insights, and wisdom that systems desperately need. By stepping into leadership roles, she turned lived experience into institutional change, influencing how rescues are conducted and how rehabilitation is approached. Perhaps the most powerful impact of her work is what it does to the girls she protects. When they see her confident, respected, and in control of her life, they see a possible future. She does not promise them an easy road. She promises them truth. Healing takes time, strength grows slowly, and their lives are far from over. Hope becomes believable because it stands in front of them, breathing, speaking, and proving that survival can evolve into purpose. There is a special kind of authority that comes from having survived what you now fight against. Traffickers fear exposure. Systems fear accountability. Her existence threatens both. She knows how manipulation works because it once worked on her. She knows how fear is enforced because she lived under it. And that knowledge makes her a powerful defender of those who cannot yet defend themselves. By becoming a shield for other girls, she redefined justice. Justice was no longer only about punishment, it was about protection, prevention, and possibility. She built safe spaces where fear did not have the final word. She stood between vulnerability and exploitation, not as someone untouched by harm, but as someone who had walked through it and returned stronger. Her story reminds us of something essential. Bravery is not just surviving injustice, and it is not just speaking against it. True bravery is choosing to protect others from it, even when doing so requires reopening wounds. She turned her freedom into responsibility, her pain into protection, and her life into living proof that one woman, standing firm, can become a shield strong enough to change many destinies. One of the most powerful lies society tells survivors is that their past will always follow them, that once something terrible happens, it permanently defines who they are and what they can become. This woman's life stands in direct opposition to that belief. She is living evidence that history does not have the final say. What happened to her was real, painful, and unjust, but it was not a life sentence. The moment she understood this truth, everything began to change. For a long time after her escape, the weight of her past tried to shape her identity. People looked at her through the narrow lens of what she had survived, not who she was becoming. Some spoke to her gently, as if she might break. Others avoided her story altogether, uncomfortable with its reality. These reactions, though often well-intended, carried a dangerous message. This is who you are now. But brave women do not accept identities built by trauma. They build their own. Reclaiming her future began with rejecting shame. Shame is one of the strongest tools oppression leaves behind. It whispers that survival was luck, not strength, and that pain somehow equals failure. She challenged that voice daily. She learned that her past did not make her less capable. It made her more aware. It did not make her weak. It revealed how strong she had always been. This shift in perspective was not instant. It was practiced, reinforced, and chosen repeatedly. As a brave women's stories expert, I can tell you that the moment a woman separates her worth from her wounds, she becomes unstoppable. That is exactly what she did. Instead of asking permission to move forward, she claimed her right to do so. Education, leadership, advocacy, and public speaking were no longer too much for someone with her history. They were exactly where she belonged. She refused to live cautiously just to make others comfortable with her past. Her journey forward was intentional. She set goals that had nothing to do with what she had escaped and everything to do with what she wanted to build. Each achievement became a quiet rebellion against the idea that her future should be smaller because of her trauma. Every step forward sent a message not only to the world, but to herself, that survival was not the peak of her life. It was the foundation. What makes her story especially powerful is that she did not erase her past to move ahead. She carried it with honesty, not as a burden, but as proof of resilience. She understood that the past only controls the future when it is denied or feared. By acknowledging it openly, she removed its power to limit her. She stopped introducing herself as someone who had been trafficked and started presenting herself as someone who was building change. There were moments of resistance, both internal and external. Some questioned her authority. Others doubted her ability to lead. But she had learned something essential. Doubt does not disappear when you are qualified. It disappears when you refuse to let it decide for you. She did not waste energy trying to convince everyone. She focused on impact. Results became her response. Her life now challenges a deeply rooted narrative that some experiences permanently reduce a woman's potential. She proves the opposite. She shows that while trauma may shape awareness, it does not cap ambition. While pain may leave marks, it does not erase possibility. The future is not something handed out based on fairness. It is something claimed through courage. Perhaps the most inspiring aspect of her journey is what it offers others. Every time she succeeds, every time she leads, every time she stands confidently in spaces once denied to her, she quietly tells other survivors, "You are not late to life." She shows them that timelines can restart, that dreams can be rewritten, and that beginnings do not expire because of delay. Her life today is not defined by escape, but by direction. She makes choices based on vision, not fear. She plans, builds, mentors, and leads with clarity. The past no longer dictates what she deserves or what she dares to pursue. That control has shifted completely into her hands. This is the deeper lesson her story offers all of us. The past explains, but it does not imprison. It informs, but it does not command. She did not wait for the world to redefine her. She did it herself. And in doing so, she proved something extraordinary. When a woman refuses to let her history write her future, she doesn't just change her own life. She changes what the future looks like for everyone watching. Let this story stay with you. Let it challenge you to see, to care, and to act. Because somewhere, right now, another girl is waiting for someone brave enough to say, "Your life matters." And thanks to women like her, that message is being heard louder every day.